One of the most misunderstood parts of brewing coffee at home is the water temperature. What water temperature do we brew our coffee with? A long time ago, it was recommended to stay away from boiling. Boil your water, let it sit for like 30 seconds or a minute before you brew. The idea was it could burn your coffee, whatever that means. Then people realized, wait, coffee is roasted at more than double boiling point of water. How is boiling water gonna burn your coffee? You're already burning it. That's what roasting is burning coffee, right? So then people started to say, let's brew near boiling, especially for lighter roasted coffees. It helps with extraction. While that's true, it definitely does help with extraction. What is it actually doing to the cup taste? So in today's video, we're gonna do a little fun experiment. I'm gonna take one coffee, a pretty lightly roasted coffee, kind of like Nordic Light for those of you that are familiar with that term, and we're gonna brew it 5 times. Same recipe, same grind size, same brewer, same filter paper, everything the same. The only difference will be the brewing temperature. Now, I've done lots of playing around with kettles, and I'm gonna end up using a kettle where I'm measuring the temperature throughout it so you can see what happens during the brewing process to the temperature of the water as it's no longer on a heating element, as it is losing the volume of water in there, which will help it lose temperature more quickly. So you can see during the brew how that's actually going down. I can't actually brew at 99 or 100. When you're using these kettles and they say 99 or 100 Celsius, they're not actually that high. The highest I've been able to get these kettles is around 96. So the 5 temperatures I'll be doing today are 96, 93, 90, 87, and 84. I'm gonna do a blind cupping with all 5 of them, equalizing their temperature in cups so there's no bias based off of, oh, this one's hotter, so in my mind, I know it's the hottest one. I don't wanna have a bias on choosing which one is which. And we're gonna mark the extractions of each just to see how much water temperature is influencing extraction. I thought 3 degrees was a good interval, a good gapping between each one, because what I've heard from a friend of mine that works in chemistry and some of the sensory experiments that have been done with espresso, there was no difference until a temperature gap of 3 degrees was hit. My hope is that this will inspire you to do something similar at home and not to draw too far-reaching of conclusions from this because, again, this is one coffee, one setup, one tasting, etc. So for this, I'm using a plastic V60 just to retain the heat a little bit better so that, it's not sucking out a ton with ceramic and then needing to recool it down when I brew the next one. We're just gonna use plastic after each one. I will throw it under a faucet just to get it back to kind of the room temperature as I set the paper. So every time it should be reset to the same exact standard. Now I'll be doing a 3-pour brew, so this will probably only get us about 18% extraction. I don't like doing really high extractions. They're not my forte, so we're probably gonna be hitting around 18-19% extraction. We'll see here soon enough. And then yeah, the only thing that can really be making a difference in drawdown time and the extraction yield and in the flavor would be that temperature difference. I'm doing 15 grams of coffee with 250 grams of water for each one. Let's get on with it. Now we're at the end of the video, and oh my goodness, I'm just letting you know that we go through a lot, and the tasting is going to blow your mind. You're going to be like, oh my goodness, what just happened there? It's controversial. It's crazy. You've got to go see it. So make sure you stay around for that. But I'm going to ask that you'll take a moment, hit the like and subscribe. I put loads of blood, sweat, and tears into this, and I over-caffeinate frequently. And my goal is to hit 500,000 subs by the end of this year. Also, the day I'm filming this is my 5-year anniversary for my first YouTube upload. So woo! Granted, it'll be posted after that 5-year, but the day I'm filming it, 5 years ago, I posted my first video here. And I wanted to thank you, take a moment and thank you all so much for the support you've shown over the last 5 years. We've gone, as of the filming of this video, 417,000 subscribers. Unbelievable. But end of 2026, I would be so stoked to have 500K of you all just building this community of coffee weirdies. And let's get on with this and show you what this wild tasting's all about. Well, there's no perfect way of doing this. At some point, I'm gonna have to equalize temperatures. Whether I brew them all at the same time, there's still gonna be a big difference in the final cup temperature. There's no perfect way of doing it because regardless, you're going to have to stir to equalize temp so you don't immediately know which is which based off the temperature in cup. So that is, I mean, it's an imperfect experiment. I'm not sure there's a way to do it perfectly because you have to have them equal temp. Otherwise, it's a dead giveaway, right? And in order to get to the same temp, you've got to stir or do something in order to equalize it, which is going to add oxygen. So in the end, there's no real perfect way of doing this, but we're doing it the best way that we can. Now, each of these cups have the corresponding temperature on the bottom so that I can go through and taste, but first I need to equalize the temperature. So what I'm gonna do is I'm obviously using the mess out of this. I'm gonna go through and measure these and just make sure that in cup, they're gonna be the same temperature. So seeing where we're starting off at. So now we're going to get into the tasting. I don't want to measure the extractions yet because that could bias me if I know that, for instance, the higher one has a 2% higher extraction than the lower, then maybe I'm tasting for lower high extract, whatever it might be. So I'm not going to measure those yet. They're in pipettes, so there's no evaporation going on. I'm going to set them to the side and I'll measure after the tasting. We'll keep them in order of highest temp to lowest temp. All right, they've all been equalized in temp, and now Ugo's going to come and swap them all around. So let's get at it. Let's go and start tasting. If you misophonia, skip to the taste conclusions. All right, so again, I have no idea what any of these are. They all brewed the same exact way. The brew time was actually a lot more similar than I thought it'd be. In fact, it seemed to start off a little slower, then it sped up, then it got slower again as you got cooler, which was very interesting to me. But again, this is a one-off, so n equals 1. I wouldn't think too much about it. But it did start off, the highest temperature was 230 brew time, dipped all the way down to the middle one at 210 brew time, then all the way back up to 230 for the coolest. Everything was the same flow rate, same everything. So that was interesting. But again, n equals 1, someone else can do a lot more, or I'll follow up if people are interested and see what's going on there with brew time and temperature, though that seems a lot more niche and a lot, who cares? But anyway, predictions. With the way I think about it and what I'll be looking for when I'm tasting, in my mind, when you do higher temperatures, to an extent, you're going to get more bitterness, more of the roastiness. And so you might say, well, you want more extraction? Well, you can get extraction in other ways, whether it's agitation, whether it's finer grind size, more ratio, something along those lines. I usually find that temperature is not the way to go about getting more extraction. But I have a really light roast, so I need higher extraction. Maybe you like that taste, but for me, I always find anecdotally that I get more roastiness on those, even when they're uber lightly roasted coffees. And again, if you're like, well, I need the extraction, go finer. But bigger yield, more agitation, do something else other than that, to me. Of course, you may like it, and that's fine. That's absolutely okay. But I'm telling you what my thoughts are, so when I tell you what I think each one is, it has that as a basis for higher temps to an extent. And then lower temps, I would imagine a bit more acidity. It'll probably die off at 84 is what I'm thinking will happen. But anyway, just to give you what my assumptions are going into it. Okay. I have them in the order I think they are. 99 or 96, 93, 90, 87, 84 is what I'm thinking. This one, the structure falls off kind of completely, but has very little bitterness. It's just, it's not that exciting. There's not a ton going on in it. But compared to this one, bitterness is higher, though the complexity is also higher. Between these, I would prefer this one. My favorite sits around these three. Airing on this side, I'm assuming this is 93, 90. So airing over here, though, honestly, these two are pretty close, actually. Watch it be like 96 and 84 being the pretty close ones. That would be hilarious. 96, so that's correct. 93, all right, we're 2 for 2. 90. 87, and that means that must be 84. Yep, all right, cool. Well, that's awesome. What essentially, I was hovering towards these two as the best. They had higher complexity, to me, obviously, than these two, but less bitterness than this one. This one had a roasty, caramelized bitterness that I just wasn't down for. It's not in your face, but it was there. It was there, and it's the only one of these that I really got on, because this is a very lightly roasted coffee. And so it's hard between these two. I think it depends on the day, but these two were definitely my favorite on this table. Although the 87 was really nice as well. It's just what finally pushed me to this is it lacked structure. Though I do think the acidity was maybe a bit juicier. Now, juicy is a term that people go over their mind. They're like, that's the best sounding thing ever. Just think juicy is just like, yes, it's really nice, and it's a great way to market something like, oh, juicy acidity. It does have a bit more juicy acidity, but if it's kind of like myopic, that's not as desirable as if it was held in some sort of complexity. So it doesn't have the sweetness this one does. It doesn't have the structure or the balance this one has it. This one just has kind of like a punch of acidity. Not intense like biting into a lemon or something, but it's there. This one was just kind of dull. Yeah, this is getting to a temperature that's too low. It's not pulling out concentrations of acidity, or at least perceptive acidities that you would kind of, I think, enjoy if you're going for a lighter roasted coffee. It kind of just mutes a lot of the things. It's not as aromatic. It's just not as exciting, but there is no bitterness, which is a plus, I guess. Something you can definitely try at home. I would recommend definitely big temperature gaps, maybe even 5 degrees, make it easier. Do 3 brews, 5-degree differences. Then you can really get an idea, maybe 96, 91, 86. Now, I tried all these, the Fellow, the Timor, the OXO. They're not giving you the exact temperature it says, and every time it might be a little different. I mean, you can still use your kettle, obviously, and just go based off those numbers and be roughly plus or minus 1 degree. So that's why I recommend really taking 5-degree jumps. If you're someone that's like, today I brewed at 94, yesterday I brewed at 93, I preferred the 94. It's not because of a 1 temperature difference. It's likely in your head because the likelihood is those brewed at very similar temperatures. In fact, the 94 could have been a lower temperature than the 93. You don't really know what the variable temp, it's just not that accurate, okay? So keep that in mind. And if you see people online making these crazy, this one was better 1 degree higher than that one, no, it's not. All right, so I went through and calculated all the extraction yields just to be nerdy. And so essentially what we have going on is from the first to second, there's about 0.7% extraction difference going down. Then from the second to third, 0.15, from the third to fourth, 0.4, and from the fourth to fifth, 0.2% extraction difference. So from the first cup to the final cup, it was 1.5% extraction difference. From the highest extraction to my preference, which was between these two, there was a difference of 0.7%, and from the highest to this one, 0.9%, almost a full percentage of extraction. The TDS, however, weren't as big of a difference as the extraction yields on paper, but it's still a pretty big difference. We had a 0.5% discrepancy in TDS. If you're unfamiliar, I have a whole video on it, but essentially it's the percentage of the beverage that is coffee. There's a 0.5% difference here. Then from this one to this is 0.1%, this to this 0.3%, this to this 0.1%. So the difference between the highest and lowest extraction was 0.1% TDS. The times were interesting. It went 231 brew time, 220, 210, 220, 227. So it kind of did this little guy, which, I would expect time to go up with cooler water. It doesn't have as much energy to get through the bed. Maybe the energy's so high here that it's being a lot more efficient getting into the grounds and it's harder to come out. I don't really know there. Maybe the lower you go in extraction, you're not focusing as much on diffusion, which is something a lot of the cool kids have been talking about recently. Maybe there was slight differences in flow rate, though I think it's minimal overall. And then the weights were pretty much all the same. Just so we all know, just to be thorough with my homework, the amount of water dispensed every single time, 250 on the dot, 249.8, 249.7, 250.2, 250.4. So right within that, perfection. And the dose I had it exactly at 15.0 on my scale, which has a resolution of 0.1. Take that for what it's worth, but I would say that this is a pretty good reflection of how I've been kind of teaching filter for a couple of years now, kind of finding the TDS that you like, the concentration you like, and doing a lower temperature even for ultralight coffees. If you want to improve the extraction, maybe we'll do a follow-up video of doing a similar experiment like this, but doing it with, different amounts of agitation or amount of pours or whatever it might be, to kind of see the effect of different modes of increasing extraction that may not improve bitterness or increase bitterness, but might helping extraction in a way that doesn't include a lot of the bitter compounds in our coffee. Because right now I think temperature is something that does pull out a lot of that bitterness, which this seems to kind of back up. But of course, this is a one-off. What I'm more interested in is your experimentation. One of my favorite things about this channel is a lot of you go home and you try something similar and then you come back and report. I would love to hear from you all what your results with this are. Are you still a fan of the 96? Is that your favorite, even though there's some bitterness to it, because maybe you find there's more structural integrity on it and you prefer that at the expense of a little bit of bitterness, regardless of the roast level? Or are you someone that's been jiving in that 90-93 range, or someone that even likes it lower? Maybe you enjoy enjoy the lack of kind of sour, intense acidity that you might get with some of these lighter roasted coffees. Maybe you find you like the muted, more tea-like kind of brew at these lower ends. They may not be as aromatic, but they're a lot more balanced, and maybe you enjoy that lighter, lack of bitterness type of easy-to-drink brew. Let me know down below, because this is something I'd like to build on. Maybe we can do a bigger experiment. If a lot of you are really interested in this and want more than an n=1, maybe it's something that I will gather a couple of friends and we'll do a much bigger n=20 or n=40 or something like that. So let me know your thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, it would be a huge help if you gave it the thumbs up, if you hit the hype, if you hit the like, the subscribe, notifications on, all of that good stuff. Really amps me up, gives me motivation to keep going. That's it though. Regardless of where you brew your coffee, whether you do like that 96, which I find a bit bitter, I'm not the one drinking your coffee, and bitter is not a necessary evil. In fact, people all over the world have that as part of their culinary preferences. So if you're someone that enjoys the bitterness at 96, 97, or however you're brewing it off the rolling boil, if you're someone that enjoys that 93, that 90, or a 91.7 because you're convinced that's the best, or an 87 or an 84, wherever it is that you enjoy drinking your coffee, whatever brew temperature you enjoy, the most important thing is that you brew something tasty today. And cheers.